Hey guys, hope everyone's doing well. So, uh, Devin, this is my marketing debate on privacy. Um, is privacy online a bigger issue than offline versus privacy is no different online than offline? So, first, let's talk about what is privacy. And privacy is the right to be left alone. People's right to control what they share, who they share it with, and who can have this information. So that is going to be one of the things we're going to consider throughout this marketing debate. So first, we'll start with offline privacy. During this research, it was actually more challenging than I thought it was going to be to find information on offline privacy being no different than online privacy. And I think a lot of that speaks to how readily available and easy it is to utilize technology, whether that's for social media or taking pictures with smartphones having um, the abilities to take pictures and videos and how easy it is to upload them from there to social media. That makes it hard to kind of separate the two. So online is almost kind of blended those together, but we'll get into that later on. Um, and let's see. So that made it pretty challenging to build a really good side for offline. So that really made me lean more towards online being a bigger privacy issue. And I really think it is. And had this topic been a debate 10, 20 years ago, I think it'd be extremely different and you could build a solid stance for both sides. But with technology, it's just makes it so hard to do that. And even so, I think we've still been able to kind of build a side for offline. So when we interact with others um, with online, and this is kind of like talking about how offline privacy would be no different than online. How they're both like how they can both be invasive or how you can kind of pick and choose what you share. So in offline interactions, when we just speak with people that we meet, it's important that you share information with them so you can build a relationship with that person. But ultimately, we can control what we want to share. We can leave the conversation when we want to. We can give them as much information or as little as we want to. And the interesting thing with offline is uh, when you put that information out there, it's like, where does it go? So it's kind of at the liberty of what that person can remember and who they decide to share it with, if they decide to keep it between you and that person, or if they want to go talk about it. But at that point, it's information that's shared by word of mouth. So it could be hearsay. That's how rumors start. But it's important to share information with people so you can help build that relationship with them. So, how do marketers take advantage of offline privacy? One of the things that I didn't add to this, but I kind of started thinking about throughout this because of my retail marketing class is the type of ways that people do sales. And some of that is door to door or sending mail to the physical address of those people. And I started thinking about that, and that's all offline interactions that marketers or salespeople are having with consumers. And that can get pretty annoying if you're not interested in the product or service that they're trying to sell to you. So I think that is kind of one of the things that it's like when people get annoyed with ads on Google or when they're watching YouTube, it's kind of the same thing. But you got people knocking on your door and they want to talk to you, and maybe you don't feel like talking to them, or you're not interested in the product, or you get mail in your mailbox for credit cards, products, magazines, whatever that might be. So that can get kind of annoying, and some people view that as an invasion of privacy. But they can also track what you buy through your credit cards, frequent shopper cards, rewards, and loyalty programs. And they use this data to analyze what you're buying and try to figure out what other products they could reach you with. And they even often sell this data to third party companies. So not only is the company that you're buying products from and doing business with, not only are they using that data, but they're also selling it to other companies so that they can utilize that data. So now you've been put into a bigger pool where people are analyzing what you bought, uh, what stores you're using, and they're using that to create marketing that will reach um, consumers like you, kind of reach a target market. So again, online privacy ruining offline. With technology being so readily available, it's so easy for people to take videos. Like if you run a red light or if you're driving erratically and someone doesn't like that and they get road rage, they can easily take a video of that, post it online, take it to like the sheriff's department. When people are doing things out in public, they often use live streams. And this is kind of like a good and bad thing at the same time, because you can use live streams like in the COVID age to live stream games, since they can only have so many people in attendance. So that's pretty useful, but it can also um, have a detrimental effect on the way that we perceive people as well. I think this is pretty big when you look at some of the scenarios with police officers with body cams and people live streaming videos or taking videos, posting them online. Um, and that like shows like what's actually going on, and they can't sweep things under the rug. So like I said, had this debate been done 10, 20 years ago, it'd be very different. It'd be way more balanced. There wasn't as many concerns about the internet. The internet wasn't really a thing yet. So it was very easy to separate the two and be able to be like, okay, this is what online is and privacy, and this is what offline is. And I think offline was very much more private than it is in today's age. So moving on to online privacy. So companies, when you do business online, they retain this information that you use. And like when you make an account with a company such as, let's say, Nike, you might put in like your email, your address, card number, phone number, maybe date of birth, and use that to create an account with them, so that when you make future purchases, it's easier and you don't have to plug that in again. Um, and most of these companies have privacy policies, but I think after doing this, it's kind of made me aware that you have to be kind of careful with how often you do that and save that information, because as we get further in this, we'll talk about some of the scandals that have happened with privacy policies. But ultimately, it's the company's, um, it's their responsibility to protect that data. And sometimes they even sell it to third party companies so that they can utilize it for their own marketing, which can kind of be frustrating. But then we kind of take a look into some of these scandals, and we'll touch on the Apple and Facebook one a little bit later on. But we look at the scandals with Snapchat, which happened around 2015, I believe, WikiLeaks, Adobe. I can't remember the year on that one, but with Adobe, um, they had a hack happen, and it ended up affecting 10 times the amount of consumers that they thought. So that was a pretty big deal. And then in 2014, there was a hack that happened because an employee's login was compromised and physical addresses and other information was hacked and stolen by the hackers. And eBay urged um, their consumers to change their emails, but that had been way too late for them to even do that. Whatever was stolen was stolen. And I guess for further data to be stolen, it's good for them to change it. But at the same time, what's done is done. And then we look at the scandals with Apple's privacy policy. And I'm sure when those privacy policies pop up on people's iPhones, they probably don't even read them because they're so long. It's kind of annoying and they pop up all the time. So it's understandable where people don't want to read that, but they actually breached this policy recently. I think it was 2019. And then Facebook got in trouble for breaching their privacy policy because they were selling data from people who use the app to Cambridge Analytica so that they could build profiles to market for political agendas. So moving on to online browsing, how can you protect yourself online so that this doesn't happen? And there are options like private browsing. This is probably one of the most effective, but it doesn't always work. But it is a precautionary measure that we can take to help protect ourselves. And some websites even have do not track settings. And I did notice this on a few websites that I was looking at when I was online shopping the other day. They have a button at the very bottom you can click, but not everyone does this. And even though you click it, it doesn't necessarily mean they abide by it because it's their choice. Um, and the privacy policies in the US are way less strict than privacy policies such as in Europe. So, and then they use things such as cookies, flash cookies, have a list of these, fingerprinting to track and collect consumer information and data. Um, so when people are using apps for online browsing and purchasing data, that is shared with the developers and may also be sold to third-party advertisers. And this information includes contact info, call logs, internet data, calendar data, device location, and how the app is used altogether. So when we use an app, this information is sent to the developers, and ultimately they can choose what they decide they want to do with it from there. They can sell it to the third parties so they can use it for marketing, or they can use it for their own marketing purposes to analyze the target market and see, okay, how is this going to, how can we improve our marketing based on this? So it's kind of scary when you consider this, like how much information is actually like put out there and how much they kind of take advantage of it and sell it, and makes you kind of wonder like what else they're watching. So protection, California has a lot of privacy policies, but as far as through the U.S., there wasn't a whole lot on privacy policies. A lot of companies have them, but you look at some of the scandals and it's like, how often do they actually follow them? And just because they have them doesn't mean like they're actually following through with them. And when you look at like Apple and Facebook, it makes you kind of wonder like who else is doing this. And then if you consider, for those who have watched Snowden or the movie or know like information about it, talks about how the US kind of taps into people's phones and cameras to watch them and um, use information that people don't necessarily know the government has access to take action on them and have like legal matters be brought up for terrorism or whatever. And after this happened, there was kind of a big buzz on it because people were worried about their privacy with the government tapping into phone calls, cameras, watching what they're doing. But ultimately, people only really care about what's in the news based off of what I found researching. And after this whole debacle, they just kind of passed one privacy law and said, oh, we handled it. And it was out of the news. And not really much even changed based off of that. But since it wasn't in the news anymore, it wasn't really a concern to US citizens anymore. But I think it very much so is a concern. And I think it really kind of proves even more that online privacy is a way bigger issue than offline privacy, even though online privacy is kind of like taken over offline privacy itself. So with the internet, you have when you use internet, you have an IP address, and this can be dynamic or static. A dynamic IP address changes over time. It doesn't stay the same. So this could be weekly, monthly, daily, and this is what is used to like track uh, your usage online or track your computer, like the location. And there's also static, which remains the same. So it's easier to track if it's static. And internet service providers do have privacy policies, but they don't share them. And they often sell the data that they collect to third parties. Um, so that can include like what you're looking at on the web and like how often you're using your computer and any other um, things that are done using your internet. Let's see. So how can we protect ourselves from this? So the nice thing about internet is that these servers allow for multiple computers to be connected without wires. But often when we get them, they come with a service with the security features turned off. So they're easier for us as consumers to install. So when these networks are password protected, it is much harder for someone to break in or hack our computer or the network and access our personal info via the wireless network. Guest networks, a lot of times you see them having no password, and it's very important that when we put guest networks up, that they're password protected so that they can't be hacked as easily. And other ways that you can kind of protect yourself is utilizing firewalls, disabling file sharing, constantly updating security features, changing your Wi-Fi settings, your VPN, which is your virtual private network. But this isn't always effective, but it definitely does help. Secure surfing, SSL. These are all features that help prevent hackers from accessing your network and stealing information via your Wi-Fi connection. So moving on to the Facebook scandal. In 2018 was when Facebook was caught for selling information from people using their app Facebook to Cambridge Analytica. And basically what Cambridge Analytica did with this information is they used this personal data that was obtained without the consent of users to be used for political advertising. So this is a scenario where a privacy policy was in place, but it wasn't upheld. And there was a lot of legal matters into this. I didn't really dive too deep into it, but I think this is a prime example of how our online privacy isn't necessarily as secure as a lot of people think it is. So moving on to Apple, and there's a lot of talk on the Alexas as well, how they're like always listening, and when you queue them up, they kind of listen to like little snippets of what you say, and then that is used to kind of analyze how consumers use Alexas and like what products they might want to buy. So like if you say the name of a product and the Alexa hears it, that might pop up on Amazon as an advertisement next time you get on. The same kind of thing is happening or did happen with Apple. And in this scenario, it was when Siri was listening and recording private conversations, and then contractors would listen to this. But Apple has always been a big preacher on their privacy policies, and they're located in California. So they have to follow the California Privacy Act. I can't remember the name of it. I had it written down. But basically, they have kind of more of a privacy policy than the US altogether, making it a requirement for online companies to abide by these policies and make them known and have consumers agree to them before they use their products. But in this case, they use scraps of data, each one harmless enough on its own, and assembled it, synthesized it, traded, and sold it. And they use this to process and create an enduring digital profile of these consumers to let companies know you better than you may know yourself. And that came from an article in Forbes. And so basically, they were using the recordings from Siri and they're selling it so people could build a profile on them for marketing. Just another scenario of where privacy policy was in place, it was breached, and we're led to believe that our privacy isn't as private as we think online. So, as I've kind of leaned towards the whole time, online privacy, I definitely think the privacy issue online is bigger because of the amount of technology that is available. And then you look at kind of the regulations for policies and some of the policy breaches that have happened and the loss of data that has happened and the amount of hacking that happens. Um, it's just kind of apparent that online privacy is much bigger of an issue because once you put something out there, it's out there. Someone can hack it, they can access it. It's basically there forever once it hits the online cloud. Whereas in offline privacy, you can kind of choose what you want to share, um, and how much you want to share, who you want to share with. You can leave a conversation when you want, and that information doesn't necessarily last forever, because that person can kind of choose what they do with it. And if you share information with people that you trust, then they're probably not going to give out that information. Whereas online, you can post something and then people can take it and twist your words because you put it there in black and white, and people can interpret it in any way they want. They can take pictures. Your information can be hacked online, whether that be credit card information, whether that be your address. I think there's a lot more at stake with your online privacy, and there's so much more examples of how online privacy is breached through hacking or policy breaches. So I definitely think after researching on this and using numerous articles, and the difficulty of finding information on offline privacy just shows how much bigger of an issue it is for online over offline. These are the sources that I use throughout my research. Yeah, so can't wait to hear some of the questions and feedback you guys have. Thank you.